Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. Before we crack on with our interview today, I would like to thank our sponsor, Coros. Coros was very recently born after the coming together of Spreadfast and Lithium. Coros is a tech software company that has over 15 years of leadership in marketing, care and communities. And Coros now offers one platform that unites marketing and care and helps brands create customers for life. Please go and check those guys out at Coros.com. That's KHOROS.com. Okay, on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week I have the pleasure and the privilege to interview someone influential, exciting, or just very cool within the industry, and this week is no different. I have Rupa Ganatra Popat, who is founder of Future Group and Mad World Summit. We have quite an interesting relationship because the last time we spent any time together, it was actually on stage at the event at, where was it?
Yeah, that's right. It was at a hotel in, I think in Holborn or Covent Garden.
Yes.
We were on an artificial intelligence panel.
Of course we were, yes.
Yeah.
So we will have spent more time on stage and on a podcast than in real life, which is a shame. But thank you so much for coming down.
Pleasure.
So for people who don't know you and what you do, can you give the audience an introduction?
Yeah, sure. So to give a bit of an introduction to the current businesses that I have started. So first of all, I actually fell into this arena. So I ran an online retail business and I was looking for events to go to that could help me understand where the future of marketing was going, how retail was evolving, digital, e-commerce, influencers. So this was like back in 2014. And I couldn't find an event to go to that was kind of answering all of my burning questions that I had as someone running an e-commerce business. So what do you do as an entrepreneur? You go and create what you think is the event that you want to attend. So the first event was literally that, bringing together Facebook, bringing together speakers from around the industry that we're kind of doing in the online retail space, in the marketing space, and bringing kind of a group of people together and putting on a conference. And then from there it really grew. So
what was that event called?
So that was when it was under Millennial 2020, and then since then rebranded into Future Group about 12 months ago.
Which is much cooler, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also allowed us to kind of be broader than just being pocketed into we're about millennials and just one consumer demographic. But
they're getting older these days, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about Gen Z and everything in between these days. But yeah, so it was really about just creating a platform that allowed all the right people to come together, and kind of what Future Summits grew into in London, New York, Sydney, Singapore, all the places where we've been hosting them, is really bringing a unique ecosystem together. So large brands, retailers, so legacy businesses that have been around for a while that realize that the landscape is changing, that innovation is a must, but where do you start, where do you begin? There are so many startups out there, so many solutions that you can kind of put into your marketing stack, but where do you kind of connect all those dots and bring that all together? So we created quite a curated platform of around 200 speakers. We've had over 30,000 visitors to our events over the last 4 or 5 years, and we basically curated this selection of companies that would be showcasing, speaking, that were the answers that I guess the brands and retailers were looking for. So that was kind of really where Future began. Future then evolved into not just having the live events once a year, but really thinking about what the community needed all year round. And so through that, we launched Future Insights, which is our research platform. So we both amplify other people's content, but also produce our own as well. So we have a head of editorial and content. We produce content on everything from future marketing to the most recent one we did was around retail and e-commerce success in China, where we interviewed Fortnum & Mason, Ted Baker, really large brands on how they entered the Chinese market, so market entry strategy and success in the different channels there. We also then launched FUTR Micro, which is kind of our smaller events year round. So we host workshops, innovation tours, so immersive consumer tours around the future of customer experience and different topics. And then we also launched FUTR Innovate last year, and we've run for quite a few different large consumer brands their own marketing briefs, where we work with them to create the briefs and then go out and source solutions specifically. So again, there's so many companies and then there's so many brand needs, but it's like, how do you match them? So we thought by actually working with the brands and figuring out what their needs were, or specific campaigns that they were trying to achieve results for, then we could go out and help source the other side, which was the startups or the companies that would have a specific solution to meet that need. So we kind of work both sides on that ecosystem.
So what is the most common request across all of these things? What the most common subject for the main event and for Micro and Innovate? What's the problem that everyone's trying to solve?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that especially the larger brands and retailers have is that they've got a lot of legacy tech, legacy systems. They've got really large workforce that are used to doing stuff in a certain way. And actually there is no single activity that they can do to innovate. So they really need to look at every spectrum, and that goes to hiring, that goes to the training of employees, that goes because until maybe the last 3-4 years, no one sat data scientists next to a head of marketing, for example. So a lot of things are changing in the way the groups form. I think the other thing as well is that there's a lot about success and failure. So traditionally, in a company, if something fails, you think of it as, the employee or the team of people that were behind that haven't had a successful outcome, and that's not necessarily seen in a favorable way. So it's a mindset shift as well, because actually, to be able to innovate, to be relevant in the future, you really need to be able to adapt your strategy, to have that test and fail model, where actually if something fails, it's actually not a bad thing, but it's a thing that you go and take away, you learn from those mistakes, and then you put it into something else that then goes on to work for you. So it's that ability to be able to almost say, well, it's okay to fail, and not to be so hard on yourselves. And a lot of that, I think, over the last couple of years has come from C-suite level down in larger organizations, where it's okay as long as there's a process to what happens at time of failure, or maybe there's mechanisms around that. So I think there's a lot of those sorts of kind of challenges that larger companies have when they're building kind of themselves for the future.
So how do startups solve that problem, which seems to me an attitudinal problem, like making the business accept failure as a stepping stone on the way to true innovation? Which startups or types of technologies are solving that? Because that for me, to guess, would feel like a more of a consultative fix.
Yeah, so I think that work actually has to happen a lot internally rather than it being external startups. But what that work then enables is the adoption of startups into the various areas of the work process. So, for example, if a digital marketing manager at a large brand has been doing the same kind of customer acquisition strategy over the last few years, and actually needs to start revisiting how they look at data or look at how AI, there are still so many brands that are just not using AI solutions in the right way, or just not even approaching it because they don't know where to begin. So the whole process of step one for me is very much about get that test and fail model in to the organization and be willing to try new things. And then step two is who can we go and try that with? And that's when I think the startups really come into play, because there are so many, as you know, incredible solutions out there that are waiting for brands to adopt, to pilot, and there are some amazing companies that have amazing startup pilot programs where you can get in and you can get paid pilots and you can get working groups together for implementing your technology or solution within the company. But I think step one has to happen first before that even starts to kind of work for both sides.
So let's get to know you a bit better, as is customary in the podcast. So tell me a bit about what you spend your money on. So I want to know, what is that thing that you've bought with your own money, not that you expensed, that you've used for work, where you're like, I couldn't have existed without this thing?
Yeah, so I think, love listening to podcasts at the moment, including yours, but that's just a Spotify subscription. So,
right, okay,
but I think books more than that.
So are you, is that now your podcatcher, as I hear them referred to?
Oh, is that what they're calling it?
Podcatcher, yeah. And so you're Spotify through for podcasts now?
Yeah, right. And literally every spare moment. So if I'm walking between meetings, if I'm traveling on the tube, like whatever I'm doing, I literally am listening to podcasts, and I'm learning so much, and you just feel like you're using that time that would normally be dead time to actually like either improve yourself, learn something new. So
come on, hit me with 3 podcast recommendations.
Okay, so other than this one, Oprah Winfrey's Soulful Conversations. So each one is with an author that's written a book, and while I love reading books, it's about time, and this way you get to learn a little bit about a lot of different stories. Another one is Ajay Shetty. He's British, a really young guy. Actually, I think got recently voted as like one of the top Facebook brands, doing really well, like kind of digitally. Now based in the US, and he's interviewed some. His first interview was actually with his wife about relationships, but he's interviewed like Chelsea. He's interviewed some just incredible people bringing books out again, all about life.
The podcast is called
With Purpose or On Purpose.
Okay. And this, I'm going to read it though. So, can you do 3 in a row that I need to investigate?
The other one I've been doing is more from a business entrepreneurship angle, but Tony Robbins is doing a lot of awesome interviews with entrepreneurs. So the one I listened to most recently was with the founder of Orange Theory, the fitness brand that became $1 billion brand.
And what was the insight from that conversation then?
So one thing was that the founder actually started the business in her 50s, and she was a single mother. She had just lost her job. So first for me, it was like, it's never too late. So that would say my first lesson. The second lesson for me was, so she had created the concept of the fitness product, and she was out there doing it in a single studio and offering it out and building her own community, because we all know that community is so important these days when you're building any product offering or brand. But the bit that for me was really interesting was that the point that she realized that she had something through being in the right place at the right time. She was connected with what became her 2 future business partners who had expertise in franchising, and the other one being expertise in more the entrepreneurship side. So the way she saw it was that she came in as the creative. She then had someone who had the kind of CEO business franchising background, and someone who had the creativity of an entrepreneur. And so actually, I think one of the things when you start anything or you're building anything, it's about the group of people that you bring together to take it there. And I think all of that. I think she had a great product, but her alone probably would never have reached the heights that she reached. And I think she adheres to that without the other 2 partners as well. So I think that was a second lesson for me in that it's really about choose wisely, and choose really great people with skills that you don't have, and that comes back to marketing. That comes back to really anything that you do when you're looking out to achieve something.
So before we got onto this podcast, you mentioned that you have property investments. You used to be an investment banker, is that right?
Yeah.
You've set up an online retail business. You've set up a successful global events business with like multiple spin-offs. I just can't imagine the state of stress and overwhelm you must suffer from. So how do you deal with that?
So I think first of all, it's a lot about finding tools that work for you in that. So for me, one of the things is that I do a lot of meditation, a lot of like reflection. I meditate almost every day.
Tell me specifically what your meditation practice is.
Okay, so I use the Calm app often, and then I also do my own practices, which I've probably, I've learned along the way. As well. And I also, I visit a meditation centre near where I live called the Self-Realization Fellowship at times.
Amazing.
So there's so much stuff.
Tell me to shut up, but when, how, talk me through the practical application of a meditation practice.
So for me, it's just that when you go, I think the industry we're in is not a 9-to-5 industry. It's a 24/7 industry. Plus, then being, an entrepreneur as well, it's really kind of full time. So your mind never stops. So for me, the first thing was, how do I calm my thoughts down? Because even I know a lot of people talk about this more now, which is amazing, but a lot of people, it takes them a while to get to sleep, because even when the day has ended and by the time they go to hit, the pillow hits, the head hits the pillow, there's a lot of thoughts going on, and you're thinking about what I've got to do tomorrow, and what about this that happened today, and all these sorts of things. So for me, the number one thing was, how do I calm those thoughts down? And thoughts are great, and it's great to be creative, but you've got to put parameters around that for your own health, and actually you become more productive through that process. So it began with just simple breathing exercises. So it's really simple, but someone quite wise told me, breathe in for 4, hold your breath for 7, and then breathe out for 8. And you could do that anywhere. There's no app. You don't need to have you could do that here in this room right now. The beauty is that that's a tool that's with you, and you see the effects of doing that for even 30 seconds, for 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever you can do. And all of a sudden it kind of, that was one of the things that worked for me. And everyone's different, and everyone has to try different things before they discover their, kind of own approach. But that for me was the beginning of it. The Calm app, I think, is fantastic content. And so, I tried different apps. That one worked really well for me. And then also what I think is one of the world's best kept secrets is he's actually a philosopher and an author called Swami Parthasarathi. He's written 11 books, I think 12 coming out. He's taken the ancient Indian philosophies and converted it into the modern day living. So practical application of the way to live your life. And it's just been, for me, it's been life-changing, both personally and in the workplace. And I refer to the text all the time. I refer to different pieces at different points on if you're, something, but that it covers everything from leadership to, calming those thoughts, how you approach time as well, because as being, in this industry, time is one of our biggest assets, because so much happening. Where do you allocate your time? All those sorts of things. So that for me has been kind of one of the most useful teachings that I've had over the last 5 years.
So this probably isn't true, but I like it as a quote / story anyway, that apparently Gandhi said that he meditated for an hour a day, unless he was really busy, and he did it for 2, which I just think is spot
That's
on.
Brilliant, yeah.
Okay, so to pull it in a different direction, so what advice would you give to a smart, young, driven, qualified student who was trying to get into this industry?
Yeah, so I wish I could write it now and give it back to my young self. But no, I'd say first of all, just be hungry to learn and go and get work experience. So I got my first graduate job when I was at the age of 21, coming out of university. But from the age of 16, other than doing Saturday jobs and paid work, I was getting free work experience whenever I could. So I'd offer myself for a week or 2 at a firm or at a company at no cost, but just to go and learn from them. So if I couldn't do that necessarily for the whole summer, but I could allocate some time to go and do that. And that not only built my CV, but it taught me quite early on what I didn't want to do and what I did want to do. So I would say that the process of it is actually part of the process of elimination. And also I think one of the most powerful things that I know now is that knowing what your strengths are and knowing what your weaknesses are so useful. So if you can learn that early on through these experiences, through learning exercises, it will help any student understand like their strengths, passions, where that lies, and also you're building your network at the same time. So when you are ready to come out, when you do have a summer, and that someone that you've worked with has a paid internship on offer or something like that, you can really continue to build that network and build your future pipeline of job opportunities. The other thing I would say is that for students, it's so important to understand that the way the world is changing, that we see it, I think, constantly. But they really need to get used to the fact that change is going to be constant for them, and therefore, in the things that they're learning, think about agility, think about pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, always get comfortable with that whole process, and that those sorts of skill sets will last all the way through, whatever the job or the industry happens to be in the end.
So I think that last bit of advice is probably just relevant to everyone, and I think it's almost like an elephant in the room when people talk about comfort zone, because it makes so much sense. It's just perfect, like I guess it's like North American business phrasing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, get outside of your comfort zone, and it makes so much sense. But I find that incredibly difficult to do. Like, how would you advise a non-student? How would you advise a 40-year-old to get out of their comfort zone when they've spent their entire career honing whatever it is to get to that point?
Yeah. So always for me, what I do is break things down and make it so it doesn't feel so kind of overwhelming, whatever that task is. I think also when it comes to comfort zone, what does that actually mean? It means, I guess, doing something that wouldn't necessarily be within your skill set or within your natural day-to-day. So, as you know, as being kind of an entrepreneur, you end up having to do so many things that you never had to do in your day-to-day job before. Like I remember at the beginning of, now it's amazing when we put these live events on, because we have such an incredible team and everyone's an expert in operations and finance and marketing and sales. And at the beginning, we had no team, we had nothing. So I almost feel like every day was, pushing yourself out there and doing things that you weren't either not necessarily something that you liked doing or something that met with your skill set. But the best way to do it is, I know it sounds probably, silly, but the best way to do it is actually just get out there and just start overcoming those things. Because for me, there are things that I was so uncomfortable with doing that actually having overcome them has probably made me a better leader or a better in some skill set.
What was the worst thing you did? What was the toe curling thing that you had to survive?
So I don't like letting people go. I just
I'm not
find
sure anyone enjoys that massively.
No, but I find it, for me that's quite, because I feel like, when people join a company and it's with all the best of will, and there's always there's a lot of content out there, like the US stuff you were saying right now about hire quickly because we have to work in a fast-paced environment, but fire quickly as well. But it's actually a lot easier said than done. And actually, what metrics, when you're a new company or a small company or a young company, what metrics do you measure that off? Like, you haven't got a framework necessary of 5 years ago this situation happened and we saw that this wasn't working out, or this was, or that sort of thing. So there's things like that and part of that is maybe just having uncomfortable conversations as something that having to address things that aren't comfortable. So the only way for me to really do that is that I continue to do it. I hopefully get better at it and feel better about it as I do it, because you can't really avoid those sorts of things. It just helps you. It makes you stronger. It helps you grow, but it doesn't make it any more comfortable.
No, well, thank you for being so open and honest about that. So, that's fascinating. It's so good to be talking about meditation again on the podcast. It fascinates me. The practice of actually making it happen fascinates me. So we're going to move on to your shiny new object now. And I think that you could probably be on every week for the amount of startups you work with. Your exposure to innovation globally must be unparalleled, I'm guessing. But there's a company that we both know that used to be called Scribeless that is now called the Handwriting Company. So there will be people who don't know anything about this business. So could you describe precisely in simple terms what the handwriting company does?
Yeah, sure. So they've built a product over the last couple of years, which is an AI robotics product that essentially you can go and create handwritten notes and letters en masse. So the AI robot learns your handwriting, or one of the things I love is if you don't like your handwriting, you can pick a new one. So you can literally design what you want your future handwriting to look like, and you can it creates personalized letters, cards en masse. So when I really like startups is when I can hear what they do in under 30 seconds or 1 minute, and I can see straight away in the real world an application for it where I'm like, oh my God, everyone should be doing that.
So what is the application in a marketing context of the handwriting company?
So the one for me that really stood out was that when you go away and you stay at a nice hotel, one of the customer experience touch points you get is like a personalized note welcoming you back, or if you haven't been there before, welcome you for the first time from the manager of the hotel. And it's just it could be a postcard, a letter, a note, really nice small touch, for example. And that's one of the kind of, when you think about marketing, it's, the full customer experience from start to finish. And that's one of the touch points when you're in the experience of what a brand can do to kind of engage with you and thank you for choosing them over the 1,000 others on booking.com that you had an offer with. So this sort of solution for that allows you to basically put the templates in. You could, I don't know if it's there yet to link it to depending on linking it to your other, technology. So you literally feed through every morning, these are the new guests arriving today in these rooms, let's print them and deliver them out. But for me, that is that's just gold dust as a kind of little touch point that doesn't take a lot of effort when you've got a platform like this.
So we had the handwriting company, Scribeless as they were called, come to speak at an event that we run called I'll Be Back, which is the intersection of creativity, ads and AI. So we will give all of our speakers 15 minutes. And we're like, whatever you do, just don't go over 15 minutes.
That, yeah.
It's not TED. You should, sort it out. And it's amazing how few people can actually stick to 15 minutes. But is it Robert, the guy from the handwriting? Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Lovely bloke. So crushingly young and clever. It was eye-watering. Gen Z, no less.
Yeah.
And he got on stage, and within 8 minutes, he'd pitch what the company was, how it worked, what was great about it, and he just left, and he just destroyed the room so quickly because of your earlier point. Amazing. It's just we have an AI machine that can replicate your handwriting through robotics. Yeah. Brilliant. However, don't you think that consumers will acclimatise to that kind of innovation? So once you've gone to, as soon as Marriott start doing it, or as soon as Hilton start doing it, if you don't see a handwritten note, you're going to think, who are these cowboys?
Yeah.
What are the ongoing uses of this technology that aren't just novelty?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I just think the 15-minute thing is brilliant.
You must have a time.
I did an event for International Women's Day this year that I was co-hosting, and we gave 4 minutes because it was done in Parliament, and it was done in the Parliament format of the House of Commons, and everyone had 4 minutes, and people thought, oh my God, there's a roster of speakers, it's going to take ages to get through this. But we took out people getting on stage and even just introducing themselves, and we took out the your 4 minutes, you're going to get stopped because that's the rules there. So you actually get interrupted mid-speech if you go over your 4 minutes, and everyone's going to try and keep within it. And then people just delivered their message, their pledge, their for their topic within 4 minutes, and each one was a different topic on getting the theme balance better. So I think the shorter, the punchier, the better the content, and a lot of the time. Yeah,
my thing is that if you see someone brilliant on TED, they've probably written a book or spent some time doing some research, and it's somewhere between 3 and 5 years, and they do it in 18 minutes. If you can't tell me about your marketing thing in 15, then it's no good. But anyway, that's maybe
and going back to your question, I think yes, there is a potential to, I think with everything now that we do, we have to continue to always improve, evolve. So there will be other iterations either of the product or of the way that it's used within that specific context. So I just think that we all, with everything, customer experience marketing always is evolving. So whether that becomes it's used at other touch points, whether it's used, it can also be used you can actually link it. If you don't want to get the whole thing, you can link it to your own printer. So it can be used just for internal letters and other ways.
There's the scale.
Yeah, I think it's the scale that, but personalization, yes, will always have to evolve, and whether you're a hotel, Marriott, Hilton, or any other brand. But that's just the nature of the fact that customer today demands more, because they have the ability to demand more because of the way the market is.
And I think it's one of the problems with marketing and AI that I'm sure it's going to be this year. I've said that for a couple of years, that inserting AI into a sentence doesn't justify the outcome. This is the first TV ad made using AI. This is the first dress.
That's what you said on the panel when we met
that was
a year or two ago. Yeah.
But the story can't be the fact that it used AI.
Yeah.
At some point, that's going to be like, well, we used a computer to make things. It's not interesting. It's like, is the output amazing? And the output in this case is the feeling that someone has when they walks into a hotel room to get this handwritten note. Yeah. But that, the more times you see it, and I think that's another problem with personalization in general. Like if you're looking at an ad and it says, "Hey, Newcastle," it's and the first time you see it, oh my God, how did this ad know I was in Newcastle? But the second time, less interested, and so on and so forth. So
actually, in 2016, we had a conference session on personalization, or maybe it was 15, called Dear Julia, how personalization goes beyond just personalizing the first name and the email, because that's what personalization meant. And all of a sudden everyone was like scurrying to get the first names of their customers into the CRM so that they could do the email. And now it's like, oh my God, they didn't put my name at the top. Are they just sending out like mass stuff? And it's just, you're right. But it has to continue to evolve.
Yeah, it's reductive now, isn't it? So you only notice if it's not there.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of race to the bottom for personalisation, which is quite an interesting one. Cool. So we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much. That was we covered so much stuff. It was really broad, and thanks for re-inspiring me about meditation and the podcast recommendation. So I know that there's a lot of founders that listen to this podcast who should be involved in your community, your network. So how would you like them or anyone else, or brands obviously, to get in touch with you?
So I mean, we have we have our online websites, but you can also just reach me directly on email. So it's Rupa, RUPA @FUTR.today.
.today?
Yeah.
Excellent.
We couldn't get .com, and then we thought, well, let's get creative with it.
Today's always going to be relevant.
So the future today, yeah. But yeah, we've got the website is future.today, and then the other event that we run is called the Mad World Summit. It's an amazing event which is in its second year, where 1,000 people come together, really helping employers and founders understand mental health in the workplace.
Where was Mad World Summit last year?
It was in the city in London.
Liverpool Street.
Yeah.
So the weirdest thing happened was a previous guest, Russell Goldsmith from Odear. Sorry, Russell, I know that I've got that wrong. Anyway, they're a podcast business, and they had a stand and they were interviewing lots of different people. So I said, Russell, can I come and interview you about podcasting and marketing? He said, sure, but you'll have to come down to this stand. And so we're just in this busy, the central bit.
Yeah, the exhibition area. Yeah. I can't believe you were there.
I unfortunately didn't see the events. I had to just come and do this podcast with Russell, and we recorded it. And then about 10 minutes to the end, similar time, there was like a flash mob of people singing Mad World a cappella with like these little balloons. So we had to kind of sustain the end of the podcast with people singing Mad World.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
It was pretty surreal.
Yeah, we definitely. Next year you should be podcasting, or later this year podcasting there again. Love to have you guys down.
Yes, that would be fantastic. And look, it's your story. It's really inspiring, and I urge anyone who's listening to this to reach out. Certainly, if you're a startup or a brand, you work with some of the world's biggest brands and clearly some of the world's best startups. So do reach out, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.